of the work we need to do going forward. We acknowledge that as part of the 6th administration, we've entered the mid-term with a rough half of the first 5-year term, which is already behind us. 2.5 years, it's behind us. And at this critical juncture, it is instructive to conduct an honest and a comprehensive assessment of our performance so far as government, so that we are able to up the ante to ensure that we consolidate the work we are doing to provide services to the people of KwaZulu-Natal. In conducting this exercise, one takes into consideration that we are still confronted with one of the most testing global challenges, which is COVID-19. It is against this background that we gather here to devise and consolidate fresh program of government to address the expectations of the people. We take note that the 6th administration has been baptized by various not setbacks per se, and not milestones, but various difficult moments that have not confronted any of our administration since 1994. Since 1994, we've never had the outbreak of a pandemic like COVID-19. But since 1994, up until this far, no administration except this one had to grapple with challenges emanating from the passing on of His Majesty the King and the subsequent passing on of Queen Manchombi, who was the regent following the demise of the king. We had to deal with these situations, but on top of that, our own term was compounded by the civil unrest that took place last year in July. Standing firm in conviction that we will conquer and ultimately prevail. The winds of tribulations are behind us, yet we have to soldier on for the sake of the people of KwaZulu-Natal, who look to this government with hope and promise for a better life for all. This Lekgotla is therefore for the people of the province of the province at the center of service delivery. 4 years ago, the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal commissioned the Status A to conduct a survey to test satisfaction levels among the citizens with regard to the provision of government services. One key finding of that study was that while the people of KwaZulu-Natal were relatively more satisfied with the services they received from the provincial government, it was not so good for our local government. Importantly, the survey indicated that only 40% of citizens were completely satisfied with the local government services. This meant that a massive of 60% expressed varying degrees of dissatisfaction. Among top issues most people complained about were water and sanitation, electricity, clinics, affordable housing, crime and corruption, and road maintenance. And therefore we meet today in the aftermath of the local government elections. And that will attest that the survey we conducted 4 years ago was truly an indication of the feeling of the people of the province. And attesting to that was the low level of participation in the elections, which on its own was the dissatisfaction and the expression of dissatisfaction from the people about the local government. On top of that survey, ahead of local government elections in 2021, we undertook a comprehensive assessment, and this assessment done by KOPTA in KwaZulu-Natal examined the 54 municipalities that we have. The assessment indicated challenges in the following areas: infrastructure backlogs and gaps in the face of rapid urbanization. And under this point, I want to dwell on one aspect, or on both aspects. On one hand, you are faced with the infrastructure backlog, but I would want to emphasize that we are faced with the challenge of infrastructure. Infrastructure backlog is one of that, but on top of that is the aging infrastructure, dilapidation, and then backlog. But under this very same point, we underline the rapid urbanization. It is our wish that we develop rural areas, and it is our wish that people should work in areas where they reside. But almost all studies indicate that because of the infrastructure, both physical and soft infrastructure, which is in urban areas, more of job opportunities will be in urban areas. And as a result of that, Africa is going to see most of rapid urbanization with the influx of many people to urban areas. And therefore, we need to take stock of this in terms of our plans with regard to infrastructure, the bulk infrastructure, but also roads and others. And having said that, the second point from this assessment undertaken by KOPTA was violent community protest, usually about complaint about water stoppages or disruptions. Some 5-10 years ago, the issue of water was about rural areas, but it is now affecting both township and rural areas, as well as suburbs. We do need to pay attention to the issue of provision of water, but more importantly, we should upscale our communication strategy. I think we must welcome the initiative of eThekwini Metro of updating people where there would be disruptions. While we do so and keep people informed, we must work with speed to ensure that we deal with the issue of water disruption and shortage. Complicated division of Revenue Act, which provide for set aside of repair and maintenance, was one of the issues that KOPTA identified as affecting the 54 municipalities. And in this regard, we are reminded that in the last year's State of the Province address and subsequent budget hearings that took place, KOPTA and Treasurer were mandated by the Lekgotla to undertake an exercise of ensuring that they work with municipalities to reserve at least 8% of the infrastructure budget strictly for maintenance. And we would want to once again underline this point. While we focus on infrastructure development, we should equally focus on maintenance. Number of cities are affected by dilapidating infrastructure. The worst amongst all is the city under Umgungundlovu called Umsunduze, where we need to work hard to ensure that we address these challenges. Undercapacitated project management unit in most of municipalities was highlighted as a causal factor for slow growth, for slow grant expenditure and unspent grant funding being withheld. And I think it's one area that needs to be given a sharp attention by KOPTA and by Treasury, but by all municipalities, wherein number of municipalities forfeited conditional grants because they don't have capacity. But that capacity, when we thoroughly assessed, and as KOPTA will present later, is not necessarily a capacity to process, but it's a problem around planning and a problem around supply chain processes, where planning will take its own time, supply chain processes will take its own time, including reviewal, reversals, and all of those challenges in municipalities. And when KOPTA tried in some other municipalities to intervene and assist, they were faced by resistance. I think it is important that we emphasize the understanding of what is social or conditional grants. Conditional grants are given to municipalities and departments for specific services. If those services are not executed, the national government withdraws those conditional grants. As you fail in 1 year to spend on conditional grants, the subsequent year, that conditional grant will be reduced. And if you fail to spend the conditional grant will sometimes be taken and allocated to another municipality. And our municipalities often get embroiled in challenges around who is given a particular service or a particular contract at the expense of the service itself. As a result, many departments and many municipalities lose conditional grants. What then becomes the end and the perception of the people about this is that government is not working. But you find that it is not government as a whole, the three spheres, but it is one department or one sphere of government. And it is going to be important that we plan acutely for the next financial year as the provincial government departments, but as all districts. The challenge that was also identified in this assessment in 2021 by KOPTA was high water and electricity losses. And some of the municipalities were losing more water than the water they could supply to the people. I'm not for this session gonna be naming and shaming, but as we proceed, we will get to details. Because there are municipalities where the issue of water losses is not a challenge. It's just left unattended, and it will take days or weeks for municipalities to attend to that and repair areas that are damaged. Water and electricity illegal connection is also important. It's the one area that we need to attend to. But the last among these, it's a complicated billing system in municipalities, especially our urban municipalities, and in this regard, our metro and secondary cities. The billing system have been found to be so complicated, difficult to manage, and causing a challenge for people to pay. If you are taxing, any taxation system in a country must be easy, must be friendly and easy. Charged because I have to pay for this. But secondly, we must make it easy for people to pay. And I think one institution that has been trying to make it easy for people to pay will be like SAPS. I think some of the municipalities are working on that. But the issue of revenue management systems in all our municipalities need serious attention, including the collection rate, but also including the billing system itself. Because if you will bill people something that is not credible, and in their eyes they are not convinced that you are fair, then they will resist paying and it becomes complicated. We're highlighting these issues because as government we must govern in a transparent way but provide services as expected. COPTA survey also identify financial challenges, and beside the issue of billing, it was also highlighted that the inadequate budget allocation for operation and maintenance was a problem. There was an identified regression in some municipalities when it comes to audit outcomes, with a slow pace in instituting constituency management. The absence of a rate-based in traditional areas where services are provided was also identified, an unaffordable salary bill against shrinking revenue sources. High level of incorrect billings, as I've said, was identified. Our municipalities have also been beset by challenges of governance, with several municipalities placed under Section 139 of the Constitution. We've seen ineffective oversight by councillors over the administration, leading to repeated adoption of unfunded budget, no improvement in audit outcomes, and low grant expenditures. There was the slow or non-implementation of fundings or of findings, to be specific, especially arising from forensic reports and Section 106 findings and weak relationship with traditional leaders. In November, we also had a report of the Ipsos survey, which indicated that less than 18% of the adult South Africans think the country that is going in the right direction. Among the 3 areas of concerns that this survey listed was safety and security. And the survey indicated that at least 55% of the South Africans were satisfied, but the whole 45% were really not satisfied. But really, this is the country survey. And if you put it to the provincial context, it will be otherwise. Affordable services were standing at 32% satisfaction. So people are saying we're getting services, but even though we get them, they are not at an affordable level. And others are saying, no, we're not getting services at all. We do need to pay attention to this challenge. The issue of refuse removal and clean streets was one of those highlighted by communities, and the satisfaction level was at 12%. It is the worst, and people believe that they've been left in an environment where their life in terms of health is not protected because of refuse, the failure to maintain streets clean and ensure refuse removal. As we converge here, at least 6 municipalities have received Section 106 notices, and they stand to lose their grounds. And as we are here today, on top of that, we are grappling with some municipalities that might not complete their grants, as I indicated. The main challenge of refuse removal is around urban areas, such as eThekwini and Umsunduze in particular. But it also affects a number of other municipalities in the province. As I said that people are talking about satisfaction on services. One of the key challenges has been the provision of water to the people of KwaZulu-Natal. And as far back as 2019, when we assumed the task of leading the 6th administration as the Executive Council, we collectively identified water as one of the key challenges facing the people of the province. At the beginning of February this year, we visited Ugu District Municipality as one of those who are tourist jewels of the province. But beside that, Ugu is one of those that are prime in terms of tourism. It's beset by water challenge. And this has affected the economic potential of this district. In Ugu, we made proposals that talked to the short-term and long-term interventions, which include reprioritization of grant funding in order to implement the immediate interventions, especially around infrastructure refurbishment, and ensuring that we expedite the implementation of schemes that reticulate water to the people. We highlighted that there should be a focus on upgrade of Umzimkulu storage dam, protection of Boboi water treatment. But we're lifting the issue of Ugu to highlight 2 important factors. The first factor is that we may need to use the same approach we used in Oku in other districts. Replicate the approach, go to other districts, conduct the same inspections that we conducted in Oku, have a whole day holistic engagement with stakeholders to understand the challenges we are facing per district and design the interventions that are direct and responding direct to those issues. But the second is that we will need to reprioritize funding for water if we are to succeed. I think from the engagement we had with the Minister of Water, Minister Mkhunu, we must move with speed to prioritize on our own for key areas that needs intervention, and then ensure that those municipalities equally do the same, reprioritize their budget to meet water provision. And this is an expectation of the people of KwaZulu-Natal as a whole. If there is something that urban and rural people are talking about, it's the provision of water. And we've said, before 2024, we would have ensured that all districts are not experiencing water challenge anymore. And therefore, we need to deliver on that commitment. The model of water war rooms, which we introduced in Oku, will need to replicate to other areas that are facing similar problems. At the same time, we need to pay attention on the implementation of the Provincial Water Master Plan, which we adopted after COGTA developed the master plan in consultation with relevant stakeholders. We need to expedite the provision of the bulk, which the department and ourselves must lead, but equally we need to pay attention to the issue of municipalities spending on water as the key priority in the province. As we reflected, after the first challenge of water, KwaZulu-Natal has identified one of the challenges as a challenge of creation of jobs and ensure economic redistribution. In this regard, we talk about the issue of creation of jobs within the context of growing the economy. But in growing the economy, we need to address monopolization and ensure redistribution of the economy to ensure that we address unemployment and inequality. As a developmental state, we must be unapologetic about the pursuit of the implementation of the Freedom Charter, the National Development Plan, and the radical economic transformation to bring previously disadvantaged into the mainstream economy, ensuring that we alter the patterns of ownership in favor of blacks in general and Africans in particular. Our developmental state must draw its impetus from the national democratic revolution in favor of the motive forces of change. The black working class in particular should benefit from the ongoing socio-economic transformation. Such a capable developmental state should focus on attracting investment, improving the ease of doing business, and ensure that there is a decisiveness on the implementation of policies. Legislation that will discipline all stakeholders and ensure that all stakeholders plays their role in the economic growth are important. And therefore, the concept of the social compact must be lifted. We must engage with both the private sector, the labor, civil society, but we must firmly understand that the government needs to play a leading role. It is us who must say which are the sectors that we must grow for the economy to thrive, and which are these sectors that will eventually create jobs. And in the implementation of this growth trajectory, how do we ensure that we unbundle all opportunities within the value chain of each sector and subsectors to ensure the integration of the previously disadvantaged? It is only through that we will be able to implement the National Development Plan, which seeks to address unemployment, poverty, and inequality by 2030. Now, all of these combined, if they are to be implemented successfully, they require a decisive, interventionist, and developmental state. Now, this state that we need to build as we continue with the implementation of service delivery and the fight against crime, social ills, and to grow the economy. This developmental state needs a capable developmental state that has human resource development and professionalized public service. The modern developmental state employs discipline, employs professionalism, digitalization, and the fourth industrial revolution. We should therefore ensure that these are becoming critical attributes of the public service that we are building. As public servants, we must be prepared to dirty our hands when we attend to grass cutting, water leaks, fixing potholes, refuse collection. But we should also be equally prepared that at all material time, we will treat all programs and execute all programs with a great sense of urgency, ensuring implementation and implementation with speed. The developmental state needs to ensure that it is ethical to resist and fight corruption. It should be carried to ensure that it responds and treat all people with respect. And this is what we need to ensure that we embrace as a developmental state. On top of the discussion, when we come to the issue of building the state, we're going to debate about how to enforce consequence management in all departments. And that will be talking about how do we deal with prolonged disciplinary cases that weaken the capacity of departments. We will also look on how do we deal with the challenge of the state which is capacitated but has no capability, where you've got enough human bodies but no expertise to deliver on what is expected. This is one critical issue that at this juncture we need to confront. If we are to implement the plans that we have put in place, we will need to ensure that we don't only look on capacity, the numerical numbers that we have in the state, whether posts are filled or not. We should also look on whether there is productivity from those who are employed. Really, we might be talking about capacity, but maybe the real problem is the state that delivers. And that might be about productivity, capability of individuals, not only through ensuring that people who are in positions qualify, but they must qualify and perform. If they are not performing, what measures are we putting in place to ensure that we deal with that? And I think in one of the presentations today, we will need to pay attention to that question. How to deal with lack of implementation of policies and programs of government. And that, among others, will need to a discussion about monitoring and evaluation between MECs, the Premier, HODs, and MECs, but also senior management in departments. It is high time that we confront this as the main challenge. We do have capacity to a certain extent. Very few departments or directorate will report that they've got 50% vacancy rate. But the outcome is nowhere near 50%. And I'm not talking about the outcome in terms of the desktop reports, but I'm talking about the outcomes in terms of the impact in the society. The desktop report, which is about monitoring and assessment or evaluation which take place merely for accounting purposes, is not really what you find when you go to the ground. And it's not really what you find when you assess based on the impact. And I think today and in the next 3 days, we will need to pay serious attention to the capacity of our departments to implement the programs that have been put in place. Almost all our departments have clear programs, and we do not doubt the correctness of these programs. But the implementation of these policies and programs is not at an envisaged level. What also compounds this issue is a question that in terms of financial spending, most of the departments will account for 90% financial spending, but when it comes to productivity and the issue of implementation of the programs, you will find that few will be above 65% in terms of the targets and in terms of specific projects that needed to be implemented. And paying attention to those issues that are really about the execution of government programs is going to be a pre-requirement for all departments, especially for all MECs and HODs. We now need not to pay attention to just issues that are happening on a daily basis, but we need to pay attention to strategic and impactful issues. So it is good that as government we are all over and we remain visible. It is good that we attend to day-to-day issues and attend to issues that affect the people and be with them. But we are equally required to pay attention to the state function. The functionality of the state, it's important. And when I talk about the functionality of the state, is the development of our annual plans, the implementation of the annual plans, and accountability in terms of the outcomes, financially, and in terms of outcome, in terms of impact. And impact must be felt in the society. Impact is not about whether through accounting measures and through evaluation you have ticked this box and this box, but the impact is about the change that is brought by that specific program. Now, having said this, let me conclude by saying the fourth challenge that is facing the people of KwaZulu-Natal is the whole issue of crime. And these range from political killings to murder of traditional leaders to violence in taxi industry to killings that happens in communities which are perceived to be driven by high level of drugs. We do need to pay attention to that. And this Lekgotla, we hope that through the presentation from the cluster, security cluster, we'll be able to deal with these issues. These are issues that are affecting the people of KwaZulu-Natal on a daily basis. KwaZulu-Natal is becoming a capital for murder and rape in South Africa. And we need to ensure that we read and get rid of this impression that is created about the province. As we conclude, we want to emphatically underpin or underline the programs that this Executive Council, as it engaged in this Lekgotla, needs to pay attention to. The first of that is the whole issue of providing basic services, in particular water. The second is job creation, which is quite important, and it is embedded on growing the economy and ensuring that economic growth is equally expressed through redistribution of the economy. The third priority is to ensure that we fight crime, political killings, killing of traditional leaders, as well as violence in the taxi industries, and ensure that we deal with killings in communities. But while on this note, we must applaud the police. We've heard that there are reports that some of those business forums that goes from one side to the other, trying to extort money from the people, some are getting arrested, and would want to support that. We want to place on record that that is not radical economic transformation. It is crime and should be attended to as such. So this third priority of dealing with crime in the province will need all of us, but it will need all of us equally to mobilize communities to stand up in support of police. The fourth is the whole issue of ensuring capable state, a decisive state when it comes to implementation, driving socio-economic transformation agenda, the ability to discipline and mobilize at the same time all social partners behind the transformation of this country. A state that is ethical and a state that is caring to all people. As we conclude, let me reaffirm some of the national priorities that were presented by the President, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, in the State of the Nation's address. Key among the priorities from SONA is overcoming COVID-19 pandemic. Secondly, it's a massive rollout of infrastructure. Thirdly, a substantial increase in local production. And we should ask ourselves serious questions about local production. Fourthly, employment stimulus to create jobs and support livelihood. The fifth priority is rapid expansion of our energy generation capacity. Compatriots, the President is accountable not only to Parliament and his organization, the African National Congress, but accountable to the citizens of this country. Equally, the sixth administration account to the legislature, the Liberation Movement, which is the governing party, the ANC, but more importantly, the people of KwaZulu-Natal, who are all accountable to the people of KwaZulu-Natal. And therefore, whatever we do today should place at the center, not ourselves, should place the people of the province at the center. It would be a betrayal of the people of KwaZulu-Natal if the current provincial government failed to implement the manifesto and the priorities that we have set for ourselves after the 2019 general elections. We expect all of us, as the Executive Council, as well as senior government officials, to take the lead in the implementation of key priorities outlined by our national government, but also by our province. We do need to pay attention to some of the questions that still remains hanging. In the implementation of radical economic transformation, we have adopted the Triple BEE Council, and the functioning of that council will need to be augmented to ensure that all industries are held accountable and implement the Triple BEE. We've been debating through Treasury the issue of implementing set-asides to fast-track social radical economic transformation. And we need to look on this with seriousness, including engaging with national government on this question. We've debated about the effectiveness of the appeals tribunal in April, and we then said we need to undertake this as it becomes the delay or the hindrance on the execution of some of the projects. Not to weaken the system, but to augment the system to be more effective and respond to the expectation of the implementation of major projects. Many projects get stalled because of prolonged appeals that we need to ensure that they get attended to. As government, we've been working hard on the issue of land, including the question of land that is rural in rural areas. And through COPTA, in April we will have a land summit that will not be dealing about the ownership of land, but about the management of land. We are expecting that that will lead us to deal with the issue of land redistribution, the plight of farm workers and farm dwellers. There are areas where people of the province are living in appalling conditions that could not be accepted anymore. We must be comforted and applaud the work of the Executive Council that at least the office of the High Master is now agreeing with us that we must undertake thorough assessment of some of the trust that owns land on behalf of the people, especially where there are allegations that the trustees are benefiting themselves. I think that milestone will need to be replicated to other areas that are affected by the similar challenge. The interventions that we're seeing led by the government in areas such as Normandy, where farm dwellers were denied access to services, and today they are getting those basic services such as electricity, need to be upscaled. And when we talk about the decisive leadership, we're talking about such things, where government will intervene in a problem and decisively intervene and change that situation, address it in a decisive way. And I think the two experiences should be upscaled and rolled out. We cannot live happy and satisfied while there are people who are living with no water, no sanitation, and no electricity, just because they live in the farming areas. We need to attend to that. Whilst we also need to attend and pay attention to the issue of farm killings that is also prevalent in the province. The province has rolled out the implementation of the district development model. And I think it is one area where we need to pay attention and ensure that it is effective to support municipalities. This year, we will be lifting an intervention on secondary cities and small towns. And small town rehabilitation strategy will need clear and forceful implementation from ourselves as the provincial government, but also from all districts. I think the presentation in that regard will need to be scrutinized enough, but subjected to implementation. So this session is not just about talk for the sake of talking. It is about rolling out clear interventions that will collectively identify and ensure that we roll out. As we conclude, the President highlighted that at the top of infrastructure development is the rollout of the programs by provincial and local municipalities. The issue of bridges, the issues of rural roads, all of these comes to ensuring that we build the capacity as the state, localize, create jobs. But more importantly, we may need to upscale in terms of the EPWP program. We need to upscale on that as part of addressing unemployment, but as part of ensuring that some services are brought to the people with speed. We therefore would want to reaffirm our commitment that we should build a province which enjoys social cohesion and economic growth, a province where all citizens are able to unleash their potential, a province where instability, violence, social ills are eroded, and we ensure that they are uprooted from all societies, but we all remain productive as the citizens. As government, we will consolidate infrastructure development and our catalytic project and ensure growth in the economy. We are therefore required to put our hands together to ensure that as we deliberate, we do not only look on immediate interventions, but we connect the immediate interventions with the strategic vision of the province, that of being a healthy province, which is a gateway to Africa as our continent, but a province that contributes to the growth of the global world. With that, I wish to thank you all and thank all members of the Executive Council and all colleagues who are with us, and therefore request that we proceed with our agenda. Colleagues, we will move to the closed session, back to closed session. I'm instructed that we should take a comfort break of 5 minutes so that when we come back, we then proceed.